Boker Tov, Yom Tov, Zarim Tovim, and Laila Tov. This is Carrie. I hope you are doing well wherever you are at. I wanted to go over a verse today, then 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. And the reason why I wanted to go over this is because I have said and shared that Yod-He Vav-He is the pre-incarnate Yeshua and Sophia, aka Holy Spirit, and that they consist of Yod-He Vav-He. And I have said that they are the God of this world. And in connecting it to even where Christianity has said that Jesus is God, in the sense of spiritual adolescence, that would definitely be true. And I wanted to share with you why I see that and why I'm saying that. And I wanted to connect it to 2 Corinthians 4:4 because I've had a couple people that have brought this verse up to me, and they've been concerned about it because of what this verse reads in English. But again, after all this time of studying the languages and looking at the English interpretations, I chuckle because most of the time, the way it's translated, because they don't have the oral tradition, meaning they don't know how to break down or see the code, because these languages are really written in a type of shorthand, that if you don't have the ability through the oral tradition that is taught you to be able to break these verses down, you will never see it. And so therefore, much of that is left out in the interpretations. And because of that, this verse in particular has provoked some fear or some deep questions and concerns. So I wanted to go through it with you today. I decided to not do it on a live stream because it is going to be lengthy. There's a lot of words in it, and it would probably be a 2-hour delivering of this message. And I just don't have the energy to do a live stream for that long, nor do I want to hold you that long. It's bad enough if I keep you for an hour and a half of your attention. And at least when you're looking at it on YouTube, you can actually speed up the video so you can make it go a lot faster. If you want to do 1.5 times the speed or even up to 2 times the speed, if you can process quickly, it is extremely helpful to do that. I do that. I'm guilty of that. I have a short attention span and call it a microwave mindset because we just want everything done now, quickly, fast, so that we can move on to the next stimulus. And I've experienced that myself. I chuckle at that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the text so you can see the verse that I'm going to be digging out. And we'll be going through it word by word, letter by letter, based upon what I'm seeing currently in my summational total of gathering. I will let you know, too, that I know that I leave a lot out. It is not possible for me to do full exhaustive interpretations for you guys, nor do I have all the information, and I never have claimed to say that I have all the information. I'm just sharing from what I haven't gathered at this point, what Spirit has given me to share with you, and as a way to encourage for your own study and being able to dig these things out for yourself, because I'd much rather have you be able to feed yourself than rely on me to feed you, because really a good shepherd, a good teaching shepherd, if that is what they have been given to do, and really should make themselves obsolete if they're doing their job correctly, because really you should be teaching everything that you have that you can share, letting them know that I can't teach you anything more. Now you go and teach. If you keep having people come back to you, then it's more of an ego situation, and that's what's really causing you to not want to teach them how to feed themselves, if that makes sense. And I recognize that this morning, more even personally. So without saying anything more, let's jump into the text. So 2 Corinthians 4:4, to them whose minds the God of this world hath blinded, because they believe not, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Mashiach, who is in the image of Eloah, God, should arise upon them. Now, the translation work that I did here was through John Etheridge, Dr. John Etheridge, and I'm just using it as a reference point. I don't normally focus too much on the English because, again, based upon what I've seen and studying, they leave a lot out. But his seems to be a little bit closer to what I would say. Yeah, I can see that. Janet McGear's work is much better, but I didn't feel like hand typing her translation. So we're just going to dive in. So the very first word, again, just please understand that when we look at these words, every letter that is added and deleted from the root word has a meaning. And you would never, ever, ever see this in English. Because again, if you don't have the oral tradition, then you would not know how to break these things down to be able to see what is being communicated. In a lot of ways, that was done specifically to help protect this information and guard it against those who would misuse it. Because this is really the ability to go into the hidden, which we would call the dark. That's not spooky, that's not evil. It just means it's hidden, that it would be only revealed to those who have done enough work within themselves to obtain their beast ego nature, to use it to uplift and assist others by healing themselves rather than taking this for themselves to control and manipulate people with it. Because you can do that. That's the difference between going into the right-hand path of light or the left-hand path of darkness. Right-hand path of light gives you the ability to take the light into the darkness and shed light upon that which has been hidden. But if you take the left-hand path without going to the right-hand path, as right-hand path means righteousness, if you go into the dark, into the hidden on the left-hand path, you are actually going into that which would take you on a dark, dark, dark path that does not have the balance with the light in it. And it'll take you into a place where you're only serving yourself instead of serving other people. Because Mother's job, as going into the right-hand path, would be able to instruct you the importance of serving others over serving self. So jumping in and taking a look at this, I wanted to say all that so that you understand that some of what I am sharing with you is the hidden part of it. I am breaking down the scriptures based upon the hidden that has been revealed through Father's teaching, shedding light, bringing light into the darkness, to shed light upon, to illuminate us, to give us more information than what we have been seeing just in our English poorly translated scriptures because of not having the code. So the very first word, who, which, and what, it also talks about a question, who, which, and who, or who, which, what, of what sort, and then whoever, whosoever, a certain, some, what sort, what manner, plural, these, those, and them. So just so that you can see that there's also a question that is being presented here as well. And again, it depends on how you are seeing it based upon the mirror of what you are and how you see these writings. So hopefully that makes sense, to those who are pure or are going to see things in pureness. But if you are coming from a different perspective, your interpretation is going to be different. So when I look at this, based upon what I know as the root, the root is Aleph Yod Nun Aleph in Aramaic. Aleph Yod Nun Aleph. And that's here in the Aramaic. I don't expect you to know those symbols because, again, this is Aramaic or Syriac, which is a different form, but Hebrew and Aramaic are exactly the same as far as the Aleph in Aramaic is the same as the Aleph in Hebrew. One, Hebrew is divine masculine and the Aramaic is divine feminine. So when we see the movements from the root, if it's Aleph, Yod, Nun, Aleph, what happened? Well, first of all, the Lamed Yod, there was a Lamed Yod added into the inside of the word, and the Aleph was removed. So we are talking about those who haven't entered into the oneness principle yet, because Aleph isn't there. So what we are left with is what was put in place, or actually it wasn't put in place, but the Nun that was elevated has now fallen. So we are talking about those who are in their fallen flesh suit in the material realm. But the beautiful part of what we see is because the Lamed and the Yod were added on the inside, we are seeing that this is, Lamed is to instruct and to teach, instruction. It has the root meaning of to incite, goad, urge, prick, and it's on the inside of you. And because of the covenant of the pieces, which if you're not familiar with that, the covenant of the pieces is the part to refer to what we see as a metaphor or symbolism or analogy. When Abraham was put into a tardime, into a deep slumber, basically a trance, but it's really a deep slumber. And it was the covenant of the pieces, and it had to do with a blood covenant, which is directly connected. Blood covenant means the covenant of promise. And this is when it was instituted, and a flaming torch, which was actually a seraphim messenger, walked between the pieces, which divided mother and father from one another in two distinct pieces, with the fire as the seraphim making the promise that these divided would be brought and unified once again. So Yod-He was divided from Vav-He. Mother and father were divided. And so this is the pattern that we see, because we see a Yod here, and then we see a secondary Yod after that. And in the middle, we have the Lamed. So we have mother on the right, father on the left, that are teaching. So mother's job is to spiritually mature you from 0 to 12. That would be in the natural age, but there's also a correlation to a spiritual. So this is getting you to the place of getting into the adolescence from being a child. And then father's teaching is taking you from that place of past adolescence into becoming a teenager, into adulthood. So getting you ready for being a bride, and then getting you ready to be married as queen. And so that's what's going on here. We have mother that is presenting and father is presenting a vision that is going to instruct you, Lamed, on the inside. So we already know that this is a spiritually mature message, because mother is only teaching the external orientation, and this is talking about instructing on the inside. So this is instructions for the bride. So not the spiritually adolescent ones that are just totally stuck in duality, good and evil, bad, black, white. This is for the spiritually mature that have found that they need to go inside and instruct themselves on the inside. So the question is, who are they? Well, I just explained to you who they are in the process of what is being shared. I do find it also interesting, though, that in the linear perspective with Hebrew, we have the Aleph Yod Nun. And Aleph Yod Nun is really the root of the word where we get that Enoch was and then he was not. Well, it's the same root word here, meaning to be non-existent. And this is also what we see in this form in the Aleph Yod Nun, not having a Nun here, which is where, hence, and how. So there's kind of like a question. So how does this instruction happen to us? And this Aleph Yod without the Nun, whenever a Nun is removed, it actually means that it's a highly spiritual matter that has nothing to do and has nothing to do with flesh. It literally is, this is a spiritual matter, highly spiritual matter. Pay attention to that, because it is dealing with your spiritual maturation and not anything pertaining to the material world whatsoever. And the first time that we actually see this word, because it is from Ayin, is when the Lord God called unto Adam and said, "Where are you?" And that's right here. And so, again, we have a Lamed Vav sitting out there. That actually wasn't translated. The instructions to connect to Father to fill you up. And this is also connected to, because this is also within here, the Ayil. So hopefully I didn't lose you on that. So I just wanted to connect this as that this is also a spiritual message here, because this Ayin, this Aleph Yod at the beginning that is found within this word, is coming from being non-existent, connecting to the point of even understanding what Enoch went through his maturation process. He was and then he was not. And that it's due to this inward instruction. And I've shared some of that with other teachings, especially if you've gone through the Wise and Foolish Version teachings up to date. You will see that we have discussed about the instruction on the inside and how important that is. So another word that is hidden within here is the word ayil, meaning strength, anything strong, a chief, a leader, a ram from his strength, a pilaster, or as a strong support in an oak or a strong tree. And please understand that whenever you have the word pilaster or pillar, it is a Hebrew idiom directly connected to priesthood, because the priesthood is supposed to be the strong support that gives the answers to people who are seeking questions. or seeking answers to their questions in Sheol, aka hell. That's where we live right now because we went through the veil of forgetting. We don't know who we are, why we're here, what we're supposed to do. Those are supposed to be answered by the priesthood, the pilasters, the leaders that would be letting you know those answers. And Aiel, this is a strong leader that has been empowered on the inside, that have been given power. They have the power, means, and direction on the inside so that they can instruct you, teach you, share with you through that which they've learned. So very important even seeing that on the get-go. So there's a question there, but there's also a resolve. So who and then how is through the instruction that is necessary, because Lamed is instruct and teach, urge and goad in the ways of the living waters to be the door of revelation for you. That will also make you strong so that you can deal with your fallen flesh in the material world. When we move into the next word, so we've got an answer already of who we're talking about here. Then we have the word for God. Now, it's interesting that when they translated it, they did the little g God. But there's really not much distinguishing within the letters themselves between capitals and lowercase. That is something that we do in English to be able to express things. And in this regards, we have Allaha. This is the Aramaic word for God. And what we have added to the prefix and the suffix, we have adulate and we have a hey. And it's interesting to see the double hey on the suffix. Normally you would see a hey aleph, but we already know that the aleph is missing from up here. So we're talking about that the flesh suit is what has separated us, right, from knowing that we are one, because that's exactly what the flesh suit does. It allows us to be able to communicate with one another as being separate, seeing each other as separate, and that is really the case for the ego entering in. And so in this case, the aleph isn't here like you would normally see, but what it's sharing with us, there's a twin revelation. So this is the pattern of the Ark of the Covenant, the two cherubim on top, that is showing that these two revelations are meant to grow the cherubim up on the top, one representing mother, one representing father, to get us to the place through angel morphology that Qumran taught. And just angel means malach, means it means a messenger. It also means a priest. It means a teacher. It means a prophet. There's a lot more. We get hung up on the word angel, but there is a spiritual maturation that takes place. And this is saying that there's two revelations that we need in order to match the pattern on the Ark of the Testimony, because it's also called the Ark of the Testimony. Those who are of the witnesses who have a testimony, because they have both revelations of the twin teachings that were given by the seraphim messenger Yod-He, Vav-He, in order for us to mature. And what we have added is the dalet. So we have the door. So the door is presenting this information, opening it up to you so that you can find where you are weak and feeble and deliver yourself, as this is the way to God. This is access to God. Now, God, again, on the immature side of it, so if we're looking at our adolescent side, God is something that is outside of us. God is something that we worship. God is something of the unknown. But as we spiritually mature, we realize that, hence why the door is here. The door is saying, open up, go on the inside and realize this is who you are. You are to become a strong leader, teaching shepherd that has the twin revelations. And again, you can see that even in the word God, what I've shared with you in other videos is that this is the root. This is how it became into existence. So we have the ul, meaning to twist. The body is being rolled together as being powerful. This is actually the root. This is the root of the word God. God. And it's one who has been connected to source within, having their heart pierced, which is a good thing. It means one who is living from the place of their heart, and that is where source, creator, origin dwells. And I will be revealing a video today that you will be hearing what source origin is in the Aramaic word, and I think it will help connect a lot of dots for people. But this is connecting to source, origin, creator, father on the inside. And that is a strong leader, teaching shepherd. There's a lot more there, but I'm not going to go in deep because I've shared with you before in previous videos about all of the information that is connected within the Aleph and the Lamed. I've shared a tremendous amount of that in the Wise and Foolish Virgins. And then you can see that the Vav, one who has been connected to their heart, has then been given power, as the Yod means power, also means the hand that gives. And this is why it's taking the static form into the active form, where they have actually strength that has been manifested on the inside. And that we're talking about that this is leadership and the priesthood. And so it's interesting that in this shortened form, just as L, that there is no power on the inside and there is no heart connect. So really, this form right here is static. This is how we would see God in the spiritual adolescence side until it is revealed to you. And having the He on the suffix side is totally divine feminine. So the divine feminine coming in, which is represented by Father, is revealing to you the deeper mysteries, the things that are hidden. And that's why the door comes to present this to you, to be able to express that that God is found within you and that you are one with God on the inside. But it's going to take twin revelations of the teachings of Mother and Father to get you there. And I wanted to make the reference too, because in saying that Yeshua and Sophia are the God of this world, the two that have come together as one, in John 10, Yeshua has said, I am the door. Well, the dalet is a representation of the door. So Yeshua being the door, here we go, the door that is God, the strong leader, teaching shepherd that reveals both teachings, one representing the teaching from Sophia, and the other one, which actually would be Yeshua here, and then Sophia here, bringing forth divine masculine and the divine feminine together. And then that leads us to our next word. The age, eternity, and world. Now, this is a really profound word. I love this word. And a lot of times you'll see there's a phrase, Leolam Vayed, which means forever and ever, or eternal, for all of eternity. But there's not an additional lamed here. But the dalet, again, reference to Yeshua being the door. Nobody comes to the Father but through me. It's been added on the front of this word for age, in eternity, and world. And the root is Aleph Lamed Mem. And this is always supposed to have an Aleph on the suffix side, especially with the Aramaic. And it means a remote time, the future, or past indefinitely, and forever. So in our noun moment, in this moment, connecting the past and the future to where we are right now makes up what eternity looks like. So this is very quantum. This is like past, present, and future all at once. And this is the door to ascension, Ein Lamed. And so understanding about past, present, future quantumly, as within, so without, as above, so below, and connecting past and future in our now together, this is really having that information is the door to the process of ascension. Now, there's so much here. Let's look at this. Because alam in the Hebrew aspect of it means to veil from sight or to conceal. Properly, something kept out of sight, to hide and conceal, also forgetfulness, as well as eternity or world. Well, we already know that we entered in through the veil of forgetting right here. That's the mem, that is the waters of chaos. So the door to ascend us out of the waters of chaos so that we can remember that we are all one. That's simple translation here. But what we're seeing is that the first part of this, which is a hidden word that, again, translators wouldn't know to incorporate in this as well, this is the Aramaic word for the Hebrew word yada, to know. And you will see it many times just in Aramaic as dalatain. And dalatain, it means to know, experiential knowledge and wisdom. Experiential knowledge. So this isn't book knowledge. This isn't I'm reading a book. This means that you know because you've experienced it, which is pretty much how a Hebrew mindset works. Nobody will say that they've done anything unless they've done it first. Reading a book doesn't count. That's an instruction manual, but until you activate it and you actually do it, a Hebrew would never say that they've done it. And I've used the example of a bicycle. Greco-Roman mindset would read a book on how to ride a bike and say they know how to do it. But in Hebrew, they wouldn't say they know how unless they read the book, they got on the bike, and they actually wrote it. So that's what this experiential knowledge is all about in the process of ascension, to be able to see the purpose of the instructions necessary while we're in the waters of chaos. And because this is a mem and a mem sophit that create the symbol, because every Hebrew letter has letters that make it up and have definitions, Father's teaching is hidden behind Mother. So again, the purpose in knowing the instructions of the living water teachings of Mother, who then opens the door to go into Father's teachings, to get into the oneness principle, which is the Mashiach, Christ anointing, elevated consciousness, those who have been instructed that will turn around and teach, those who have yoked and tamed the beast ego nature, have the thousandfold measure, Christ anointing, if you want to even connect that to the lotus flower, the thousand petal lotus flower, or Tao. All of those concepts are part of that. They have the staff of authority, and they have also become a door. So they went through the door, but then they also became the door because of the teachings. Ma, Mem Aleph, is the hundredfold measure right here. So this is the other part of this. The last thing that I want to talk about was something that Spirit showed me yesterday when I was looking at this word. And I just love this. Ein Mem, so here's the Ein and here's the Mem, means people. But it also means specifically the flock of Jacob or the tribesmen of Israel. But it also just means people. And the Lamed is right in the middle of that. So these are light instructions that provide the staff of authority that is directly connected to your heart, because heart, Leb, means the center of anything, center of everything. So this is the center of our being. There are instructions that are being given to those who are of the people that know the purpose of why they entered into the waters of chaos, because they're being instructed, because they need to have the hundredfold measure, a minimum of the hundredfold measure while they're here, so they can help anchor and bring in light. This is so fascinating to see this, because all of that is contained in this word for age, eternity, and world. And then when we move on to the next word, so again, we don't want to lose sight that there was a question in the very first word that is then answered, and we're talking about who, what, where, all of those things. We are talking about those who are our chief leader pilasters that are in the earth, that are in the flesh suit, that are working on becoming nothing. Because there's a principle of first getting into the oneness principle and then going into the nothing principle, as that's like a progression even further. But we need to at least recognize the oneness principle. And then it shows that they have entered in, they understand about going through the door into the oneness principle, where they're instructed through the twin revelations, because this is an eternal principle. Instruction that is given to individuals on the inside. This is why Yeshua always would say, the kingdom of God is within you. Go inside. This is where you're going to get your instructions from. So you can at least have the hundredfold measure, parable of the seed. But we also know that there's a thousandfold and a 10,000-fold measure, dependent on your maturation. And I have shared that before in other teachings. So now when we move on to this, this is one of those declarations here. This and these. Okay, this and these, I get that. So this is specific. And hen is the root. But it comes from Hebrew hu. So hen, right here, is the hey noon. Well, we have the hey noon. So what happened? Well, the revelation of the fallen flesh then became elevated flesh that is now entered into the oneness principle. And in really, this truly is a declaration, because Nun Aleph means I beseech thee. I beseech thee through this revelation that you would take the spiritual path that will change and convert your flesh as you've entered into the oneness principle. So this is new flesh. This is something completely different that we are going into. And I liken it to what Yeshua had in his changeover, his crossover, because when he showed back up, he was able to walk through walls. He was able to do things to phase in and out that we don't have currently because of our mental capacity has been diminished, or those things within our DNA has been diminished, limiting us. But there's something that is going to be revealed so that we can, because this is elevated flesh. This is completely changed, is different than what we have right now, and it is connected to the spirit, because Aleph is connected to spirit, spirit breath. And that's really where the formation of this word in Hebrew is the hay is the exhale connected to the inhale, which is that of a spirit being. A spirit being as self, because that's who we are. We are spirit beings caught in a flesh suit. And I did want to point this out too as well, because I find this so fascinating that even in the Strongs, it says that this form of this word is in the female position, the divine feminine, after the first 5 books, well, which is known as the Pentateuch, which is also known as Torah. And that totally makes sense to me, because Mother teaches us the basic instructions that we need to generate light within us to reveal it, because it's Tav or Hey. So Tav is Mother's covenant that is going to connect you to the light that will be revealed. I mean, there's a lot more in explaining it, but that's really what it is. So Mother teaches the divine masculine, and the Pentateuch is also known as the Torah. So when you move on to it into the writings of the prophets, the sacred writings, and the Ketuvim and the Navim, so the other additional writings, and then the prophets, that is all divine feminine. So that is heavily spirit teachings past the foundational teachings, which are meant to bring forth the covenant of light within. The trouble is, again, if you don't have and you're ignorant to the oral tradition of how to read the codes, you're going to have a mess like we've seen in the English interpretations, but also the way that that Judaism has taken a look at these translations in the literal sense with not having the codes. That has to do with the Maccabean revolt, that has to do with Qumran, that has to do with the priesthood of light, priesthood of darkness, the history that went on there, because the real priesthood, the priesthood of light that went to Qumran, that got kicked out, took the oral tradition with them and how to read the codes. The priesthood of darkness came in, had access to some writings, but they didn't know how to read it, and they created their old interpretation of the writings, and then they said that their oral tradition was what they created as the Talmud. If you want more history on that, do your own research, because you can see how bastardized things got because of not having the true oral tradition of how to read the codes. So when we look at this word, if it was hey noon and it comes from hey vav noon, what do we have going on here? Well, in what they're saying in the hey noon, it was the revelation of what was needing to be given to you in fallen flesh. And then from the morphology of it, the Aleph had dropped off, which makes sense because it was the hey noon. So the Aleph, the oneness principle, was not present in the material world because the ego and the flesh suit divided us and made us feel like we were separate. But the morphing of this, having the noon added, this is letting us know, so here, connect within on the inside to Source Creator on the inside. And in order to do this, you must take the spiritual path on the inside. And the spirit breath, the exhale, which is revelation of the spirit path, will lead you to the oneness principle. That's so pretty. It's amazing, beautiful, incredible that we have this given to us to be able to see what it's saying. And then we have the word about blinding and darkening. Now, this word also means, in Aramaic, chaff. So think about separating the wheat from the chaff, or the barley from the chaff. So this has to do with chaff. And this is in a static form. So in other words, it's going to stay in a static form as chaff, as one as being chaff, if you don't do anything. Pausing there, because I want you to think about that a little bit, because this is a very verb-driven language, and this is in its static form. So see and know the purpose how to deal with your fallen flesh by connecting to Source Creator on the inside, having your heart pierced, so that you can raise up out of your poor and destitute position to be a first fruit leader. Because right now you're chaff. And if you do nothing, if you don't activate, if you don't do anything, you're going to stay as chaff. And I find it interesting too, because when you take a look at this and you go back to like the divine masculine part of it, is that in the foundational principle, this means to be blind, right? It means to be blind. But you're already blind. If you do nothing, you are already blind. This is also a word meaning skin as naked, because in original meaning means naked skin. And that this was also the garments of skin given to Adam, for Adam in Genesis 3:9. They were clothed with skin, because originally we were beings of light. And the primitive root means to be made bare, to be made naked, to be bared, to be exposed. So in our place of being blind and being naked, think about even the Church of Laodicea. Those who feel like they are rich, they have everything, but they're poor, blind, naked, destitute kind of thing. Because if you don't activate and you think you already are, you have been darkened, or you are ignorant, because ignorant is equated to darkness. Living in darkness means you're ignorant to the purpose of why we need to connect to the heart in order to raise us up, to raise our head. And the other part that we need to connect to this word also means the opening of the eyes, to wake, to rouse oneself awake. Lots of typos here. Now, this is significant because we can see that mankind was put in a deep slumber twice. First, this deep slumber was put over mankind when Chava, when quote unquote the ribos, was taken out of mankind, Adam, because that's Adam means mankind. Adam was put into a deep slumber, tartame. The ribos was messed with. Chava, life was taken out of Adam. And then we see that again, that word was used with Abraham being put in a deep slumber. So we've been put in a deep slumber twice. That's why I say that there are several awakenings that happen that is necessary for us to connect. There's the awakening that Mother provides, an awakening Father provides, and then the awakening on the inside that Source Creator provides, which is the final awakening. So this is about rousing ourselves awake. And when you take a look at this, Ruah in the reverse order, Resh Vav Ein, means to give a blast with a horn or a trumpet. That should automatically be connecting some of you that know English translations of something about the last trump, the trumpet blast, being changed in the twinkling of an eye. Just throwing that out there. And that would be Ruah, so the reverse order, the first fruit leaders that are connected in their heart that have the ability to see. So they've been raised up, having connected their heart, having the eyes to see. Then we go into to know, understanding, and mind. So when we were discussing in the very first word, we were talking about knowledge right here. Well, we're getting into it. So again, the reason why they have been blinded is because they've done nothing to take the spiritual path. Because the information has been given. The door came to provide it to us, not only adding it to this, the process of ascension, so at least we can have the hundredfold measure, but also the door into the strong leader teaching shepherds that have the twin revelations. So you guys connecting that here? So the reason why they're blind is they need to rouse themselves awake and do something. Otherwise, they're just going to stay blind. And then when we get into knowledge, understanding, and mind, Again, from yada, yod dalet ayin, the yod has moved from the prefix side from mother onto the power of the father. And I find this very, very fascinating, because really what it's saying is that in order to get knowledge and understanding for those who entered into the waters of chaos, mem, you need to go through the living water teachings. So even connect that to Yeshua. I shall give you living water, so you shall never thirst again. So those of you who have been reading the English Bible, you know that you are still thirsty after you read it, because it's not satiating you, because it's leaving much out that you need. Because you need to have knowledge and understanding by going through the door of the inward man so that you can actually see and be given the power from the Father, having it revealed to you so you can connect to him, now having power under control, standing in meekness while you're in your flesh. So this is the process of how to get knowledge and understanding. And this is experiential knowledge here. So when we look at the Aramaic root, look at all that is contained in this root here, with the gematria using the yod is the same as this. It means to know, realize, understand, be aware of, make known, be evident, inform, be well known, recognize, and acknowledge. And because we have, if the yod was on the inside, which we already know that the process is given the yod on the inside, we already talked about that up here, that the purpose was to be instructed on the inside, having power given to us on the inside. This word actually ends up coming up and saying that it's very evident and particular and notable and apparent that there is knowledge. So those who have gone through this experiential knowledge are going to be revealed as such. And really, when you see Yod-He here, Ken and I have talked about this before. When Yod-He is on the suffix side, this is a father who is a completed mother. So letting that sink in for a minute. This is a father who is a completed mother. Mother and father are the same. So I've talked about that also as well, that Yod-He Vav-He, one coin, two different faces, same coin. But there's a process of maturation that is necessary, and that is what this is telling us. There's a process to go to have an understanding, to be evident, to be informed, to be well known and understood that you have gone through the process of completing your journey as a mother by becoming a father. Now being revealed as such, having meekness, which is your power under control, so while you're in the flesh. So in other words, you have your flesh suit, but your beast ego isn't ruling over you. You are ruling over it, which again was the purpose of rousing ourselves awake so that we could raise up and be the head over us instead of the ego being the head over us. So even into knowing, there's so much here about even considering, and a euphemism for intimacy, and making known, became known, assigned, appointed, assigned and appointed. That's some critical words here, or even having expertise. And I will tell you that this Hey Vav Nun, it means to dare, to venture, also means riches, wealth, capital, and enough. And he capitalized. And we're talking about this in a spiritual sense, as everything about these languages is about our spiritual maturation. So having riches and wealth spiritually by going through this process, the living water teachings, which is the door of you having the ability to see, that leads you to knowing and understanding in completing your journey as a mother, a completed mother that is a father. You are both, in other words, now in meekness while you're in your flesh. So again, this is experiential knowledge here. This takes us to the other word, ein lamed, on this, about, on, about, and concerning. This is letters that mean to ascend. But really, in order to fully activate this must have the hey on the suffix side, which we can already see was part of this, the hay being on the suffix side, because this is really, it's the revelation of Father's teaching here, and that we would be revealed as having this. But in its form right here, as it is, it means height and upper part and above. So when you hear us talk about getting out of the waters of chaos to the waters above, this is really talking about the waters above would be the shamayim, the heavens, which is really just speaking about us ascending in our consciousness. And I love this because Ein Lamed is also the same word for yoke. So think about this. Yeshua said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." Letting that sink in, because there's light, meaning in lightweight, but there's also light. So the Lamed is the instructions through the letters of light that will help us to ascend. So this is really knowing the purpose of the instructions is to put us in, height, depth, breadth, width, all of that kind of stuff. This is to elevate us. This is for our spiritual maturation in levels of consciousness, reaching the heavens, the higher consciousness, instead of staying in the lower. But then it's letting us know, even in the next word here, that this is meant for those who are the poor and the needy, the poor man, the weaker, the weak and the thin, as something is dangling, because we're supposed to connect heaven to earth, right? So heaven to earth, meaning our higher consciousness levels, to be able to connect them into the earth. And how do we do that? Well, we connect by anchoring the light. Totally makes sense, because we start out in this position of being weak and thin, where fat means you're spiritually filled up. So it's saying, take the door. So again, the dalet is added. The dalet is a theme over and over and over and over. Take that which is dangling, connect it, go on the inward man, go inside, find the deep well that is within you, find where you're weak and feeble and deliver yourself of it. This is your work. But the door, the dalet, has to come. This is an individual as a teaching shepherd of light to open this revelation up to you so you can be instructed in the ways of one. Getting us back into the oneness, unity, because really we're poor and weak when we don't realize that we are one. Again, so they want to keep dividing us and separating us to conquer us. But if we realize that we were truly one and unified, there's not a darn thing they could do. But as long as we stay separate and divided, we are going to be the poor man. We are going to be needy. We are going to be the weak ones, and we are going to be spiritually thin. And a lot of that is operating in fear, not knowing that we are all one. And it leads us into the word about trusting and believing. And when you take a look at this one, so the root of this would be in the Aramaic would be the He Yod Mem Nun. And Yaman is the word that means to go to the right hand. So going to the right hand, going to the right, righteousness, is what allows us to trust and believe. Now look at the root of where this is from in the Hebrew portion. So it should have an aleph in front of it. The aleph has been removed because we need to be given a vision of this, which is power, a means and direction, to then memnun, to become a part of. Because memnun means either to be a part of or to be separate from. But this is also the word for manna. So the power that we get from our manna, our daily study of the words that are our daily substance, is going to assist us if we take the right-hand path first. And when we take the right-hand path, Aman, this is the root where we get, when we say Amen or Amen, it means to build up or to support, to foster as a parent or a nurse, to render firm or faithful, to trust or believe, to be permanent or quiet, to be true or certain. continue on from where we left off in giving our creative power over to making things happen and believing that they are going to happen. We now move into the where it says no and not. And I know we've already addressed this, but again, anytime you see no or not, it simply is just you need to have instructions in the way of one. And so we have the door that we must enter into the instruction that will bring us forth the way of one to unify us, and that this is because we are needy and we are weaker. We are spiritually lean and thin, and there's something dangling that needs to be connected. And what we see as this is connected to, it automatically then transfers us into the word meaning to rise, shine, to rise and dawn. Now we've shared in teachings about Hillel, and we've also talked about Shakar. And we've looked at Shakar and Koresh, but this is really amazing to see in the Aramaic how this is written, because both of these things are Hebrew. So this is linear in fashion. The fire that brings forth life, that raises us up from being poor and destitute, or the revelation of the twin teachings of light, mother and father, the moon and the sun, that actually allows us to be able to produce light within us so that we do also shine. And we praise because of the revelation that has come forth that has instructed us. And how even rising early in the dawn is searching diligently for, painstakingly searching diligently for in those early morning hours. But now this is the place where we're talking about rising and shining, to rise and to dawn and to shine. So this is more affirmative, saying that if you do not go through the door and you do not receive the instruction and you do not become the one, the way of one, then this is not available to you. But if you do, then you can expect to rise and shine. And how interesting that we have the word Dan, judge, in the inside of knock. Like, I sit there because this word Dan means to judge, and this is on the inside of Noach, which is Noach, the name of Noah, which means to rest. So when we self-adjudicate on the inside, it is meant for us to enter into the place of rest, because through this process, it is going to cause us to rise and shine. And that's the spiritual path that we take. And right here, we also have the covenant of the pieces again. So we have mother that has been divided from father. And again, it's the door that separates. So you must go through mother in order to go through that door of the inward man that gives you the spiritual path of father that is going to bring forth life. So the self-adjudication on the inside is going to bring you rest. And there will become a time where we rise and shine. And the difference, what was added in this, what was added was the noon, the spiritual path that we must start to take through mother. That's what starts us on this journey in order to rise and shine. So rising up from our lesser nature, rising up from our lower consciousness, and then we get to the word where we have the standalone lamed, as that's the root of it, and we have the hevav noon that has been added on the suffix. So again, we already know that this is a message for the mature, those who have been betrothed, set apart as the bride, not the spiritually adolescent ones, but the ones that have entered into spiritual maturation. And with that lamed standing there outside by itself, we always know that this is the instructions of the heart. This is the teaching staff of authority. And you can see the word lamed, which is spelled lamed mem dalet. That's why I put it in caps. Lamed mem dalet are the constituent letters that make up the symbol lamed. And it means the rod of the teacher and authority. And it means to accustom, to learn, learned, studied, put together, compiled, brought together, connected, to teach, was trained, study, knowledge, and the base origin of this is to learn, to prick, sting, incite, and goad. And why is that? Well, This He Vav Nun is a liquid measure. And what is really interesting, it's really important for us to remember that also the He Vav Nun by itself, not only is it meaning lo and behold, as connected to other things that we've shared, but the He, hold on just a second here, the He Vav Nun, there we go. The He Vav Nun means to dare to venture, riches, wealth, capital, and enough, and he capitalized. So riches and wealth, to dare and to venture. As we're taking a look at this, we dare to venture, but we don't want the riches and wealth to get in the way of keeping us within that fallen flesh. So with the revelation, there's a revelation spiritually that is the riches and wealth that is enough. As we stand in the power given to us through Father in meekness while we are in the fallen flesh, but the instruction is needed in order to have the authority to do so. So we rise and shine with a revelation that has been elevated out of the fallen flesh while we're in the flesh, and it is enough for us. It really is spiritual wealth and riches that we are to use while we are here in the earth realm as being the light. So when we look at this, the word prior to this teaching shepherd staff of light that is revealed, having connected to Father in meekness, which is power under control while in the flesh, was right after to rise and shine and to dawn. And then we get the word for light after that. So again, the instructions that lead to this revelation is what allows us to be the light of the good news. So we'll get there in a minute. But light, the only thing that we need, this would be menorah right here. The mem isn't here because there is no waters of chaos. This is the spiritual path that we connect to through the covenant of the pieces, the revelation of Mother that raises us up from being poor and destitute, raises our head to be a first fruit so that we can receive the revelation of the Father's teaching, which then becomes the light. So think of scriptures that you've even known of that being the light of the world. This is us fully activated through the covenant of promises in being light. And this would totally be connected to our chakra system in having it all activated because we went through the pieces of Mother and Father. And remember, that was a seraphic messenger that walked in between the covenant of the pieces to raise us up from that poor and destitute position so that we could be first fruit leaders. As long as we start out on a spiritual path and connect to both of these teachings, these revelations of Mother and Father. Now, I am going to say this as well, that the spiritual path does not have to be through the Hebrew and Aramaic. Many of you have already found this just by simply going inward. And there are many religions out there that do teach a spiritual path. This is just the one I know. This is the one that I found. This is the one that was brought to me and revealed to me because I have had times where it has been in my past through previous lives. So I was meant to bring this forth. But you don't have to learn Hebrew and Aramaic in order for this to manifest. But it is a blueprint in a way, if you would like to. It is here, and it has been here all along for thousands of years, and is now being revealed because the light needs to be revealed. That is why in this word, what we were seeing that was added to it was the Vav, from in the root position, meaning that we've connected to our heart, connected to source within, and then the He on the suffix side, being able to see, Resh He, is part of the word meaning to see the light and to become the light and to be the light. And this really is the good news. Now I find this interesting that this good news, in Aramaic, they wrote it, and this is more based on Greek, really. So, but there's so much here, even in the Aramaic through the letters, that we just cannot blow by it. And that's why we need to talk about this. So, right within this word, because the only thing that's different from what they say the root is to what was written was the dalet. So again, are you guys seeing this theme here of the dalet repeatedly? Go through the door, go through the door, go through the door. The door is given to those who are spiritually lean, that something is dangling that needs to be connected, and it's the door to the inward man, so you can deliver yourself of your weak and feeble position as a poor man, so you can become a rich man, which then is also represented by the gimel, that of wealth and lifting up. So what do we have going on here? Well, in Greek, it is to announce good news, and it has, from the root, it literally has part of the word gala, meaning to uncover that which has been covered up. So the good news that is being revealed is that something that was covered is now being revealed. Very appropriate for where we are at, because this is really Gilyan. This is part of Gilyana, this latter half right here, because it even has a noon in there, uncovering that of what has been covered by the flesh. That's so profound. And how does that happen? Well, it's because power is given. Power is given through those who open their hand, because they give and they don't take. They are walking, having connected in humility and meekness while they are in the flesh, and they are going to be revealed. They are going to be uncovered from their fallen flesh suit. So what do we see on the front half? Well, I'll finish here. The Gimel Lamed, since we're talking about the second half, Gimel Lamed means fountain and spring, a revolving door and a trend and a movement. So really, this good news is a trend, a movement that is coming forth, that is being revealed as good news. This is amazing. I did want to let you know, too, that Gilgal, so if you had Gimel Lamed, the sages and those who are the wise scholars, and even within those who are studying of the tree of life, Gilgal is a representation of reincarnation. So because we don't have Gimel Lamed, we have one. I see this as that this is one walk in this lifetime that is being revealed to us, because if you have the eyes to see it, you can become it. Because really, it's just a matter of changing your perspective of who you are. The only thing that limits us is what we think we are, and what our limitations are. So if we free ourselves from that, we can realize that we are so much more than just this flesh suit and just the narrative that we're walking in right now. So the Hebrew word for good news would be beshorah, which means besor has to do with fresh, being fresh, full, rosy, which is also connected to being rosy or red, Adam. So full, red, rosy, mankind, announcing glad news, and it's from basar, the flesh, the body and the person. So with it being basara, the good news that is meant for the flesh and for the body, that is going to make one cheerful, full and rosy and full, remember, from being lean, is the building that is necessary, that will give us the signet ring, the wedding ring, that will raise us up from being poor and destitute through the revelation of the Father's teaching. Because this hay, the hay that was originally in the garden, was removed from us with Chava. When life was removed from mankind and we entered into the death position, we are searching for Chava to bring life back. And that hay that was on the Father's side, we didn't have access to it. That's what we've been hunting and chasing for. So the good news is this is now being returned, and it does affect our flesh. And it makes us plump and it makes us full. We're no longer spiritually lean. But that's in the Hebrew perspective. So when they change this over to the divine feminine, and we're talking about unveiling or uncovering that which was hidden and veiled, which is our light that has been hidden through our flesh suit, what's on the front side? This is so fantastic. Oh, we have this dalet, aleph, vav, nun. And if you look between the dalet and the nun, that's the word judge, which is the door to life, or to the door to prosperous life, strong base to stand on, being creating heirship, that which we do as far as that which we do in the flesh that is connected, the spiritual path that is connected to the material world, that is meant to produce an airship. What do we have? We have the Aleph Vav on the inside. So when you find oneness on the inside and connect to it, this is really that self-adjudicating process by going to and through the door into the inward man where you discover that you're one. And you connect to it. You found it through the spiritual path, through self-adjudication. You gathered and assembled what was necessary through the instructions so that you could be weaned off the milk and ripen, producing fruit through the instructions that would come to you, that would, goad and prick and urge and incite you into grasping or having the hand open, that would be given the power, means, and direction to walk in meekness now while you're in the flesh suit, learning how to deliver yourself from it because you are going to be uncovered because you've been hidden. That is so amazing. So that covering of our flesh suit, the good news is that there's a way past it. And I love that. By gathering so that we are the ripe fruit, those who have weaned and matured themselves. And then it leads us to glory and glorification. Oh, so amazing. So when we look at the root of this, which is Shin Bet Het, we can see that the Vav was added in the inside. So again, connecting to Source Creator within. And the door on the prefix side, which is the door of Mother's teaching. So again, as Yeshua being the door, nobody comes to the Father but through me. He was the door into that revelation, opening it up to us. And then we have the Hey, that which was taken from us, now brought forward to us in anchoring it in the Father's teaching, because we are finally at the place in spiritual maturation, in becoming the light, and increasing the light, by coming out of the darkness, that it can be given to us. And Shabbat, it's interesting that it's to address in a loud tone, loud to pacify as if by words, but to soothe, to still, loud and praise. And part of it when I was looking at it here too, through this is the Aramaic definition of it, and this is the Hebrew definition of it. And adulate means to praise someone excessively or obsequiously. I don't even know how to pronounce that. That's not even a word that I use, so I'm sorry if I butchered it. As being a word person, you think I would know that, but that's okay. So I'm not going to say that word again. Well, maybe I will. No, I won't. So it means obedient or attentive to an excessive or a servile degree, right? Well, the thing is that would only be, because again, if we are looking at the Hebrew and the Aramaic, we can see the process of maturation here. So, we start out as servants, we end up as friends. We see God as outside, and then we find that God is on the inside, and that we are one with God as God through spiritual maturation. So the gematria of this in a different form. So with the het first, and then the sheen in the bet, chasab means to think, account, devise, plan, consider, calculate, and to take in count. And it also, in its root form, means ingenious work or something serving to bind. Now again, you can see that through duality, dependent upon where you are in your maturation, you're going to see this completely different. But what is most important to see in this word, regardless of where you are, in your spiritual adolescence or your spiritual maturation, is the part of the word shuv right here. And this is the fullness of the shuv because it does have the vav on the inside. The whole purpose of shuv, which is to turn, I like when I do spelling typos here, to shuv is to turn back, go again, repeated, repented, changed the mind, and technically that's supposed to be restored. It also means to turn away and apostatize, and we already talked about that. Apostatize is turning away from a religious belief system, and many of us are. That's why we're in the spiritual maturation, because we are turning away of the things that which have bound us, to be able to do the ingenious work that is necessary, that allows us to change our mind and be restored. That is so incredible. And yeah, some are going to see us rebellious, and that's okay, because we all had to be and start somewhere, and we're going somewhere, and we're all in various degrees of our becoming. So, in this glory or glorification, because it's really self-glorification, not in a bad sense, it's about raising us up and changing our mind, changing our perspective. What do we see again? The door. There's a common theme. Got to go through the door of mother. Got to go in the inward man to deliver yourself from that weak and feeble position and lean position. And this is what allows you to turn and change your perspective. Going through the consuming fire, that is necessary, and connecting with your heart, activating the heart chakra, so you can build your temple through the 222, the two paths of the 22 letters that, when the work is completed, become the 144. One path of the combined 22 letters of Hebrew and Aramaic that make the 144. So hopefully you guys got that, the 222 to the 144. That is extremely significant. In building your temple through a spiritual process, highly spiritual process, where you find life, chava, that you were once separated from. It was a fence that divided you, that kept you, but it was a window in order to see the revelation, so that when you found life, became life, was marked with a covenant and empowered you on the inside, so that you could receive Father's revelation and teaching, which is really about the glory of being revealed as those who have turned and changed their mind and changed their perspective, allowing the consuming fire to deal with their fallen flesh. That is amazing. And then we get to Messiah, Anointed One, Christ, the Mashiach. So Mashach is the root, and the Mashach in the root means to smear, anoint, anointed, to measure, measured, filled up, and also with added olive, it's oil. So the root of it, to smear and anoint and to measure with the oil. So think of the wise and foolish parable about having enough oil. The Mashiach, what do we have that moved from the root? We have the adulate again. Imagine that. And we have the yod on the inside. So power, means and direction that is given to you in the inside. Because of course you already connected to your heart here. And now you've been given power because you did connect to your heart. And then it has the oneness principle. So again, the aleph on the suffix is really is showing us the Mashiach, the Christ anointing, is one who is sealed in the thousandfold measure. They have tamed and yoked the beast nature. They've been instructed and they can teach, learn, teach, learn. And they are connected to as family, as 1,000, as what they say the minimum number is to connect to, as a family, as a tribe. But again, it is those who are of the living that have been empowered on the inside. They allowed themselves to go through the fire and the water by starting their journey out through the door. Again, all of these words could be seen backwards and forwards, and they should be telling you the same thing. And so even in the reverse order, the oneness that leads to life is the name and the door. So fire and water, Shem, those having honor, authority, and character, because they went through the door, living water teachings that purified them, that gave them the power to find Chava, to find life, and become one. This is the door to the Mashiach, the Christ anointing. This is how we activate it. All of these are. So again, the process is go through the door, go through the door, go through the door. And Yeshua was a representation of that. And we have many that are activated as mothers in the earth that lead to the revelation of Father, that are here to show us the way. That is the purpose of the 144,000. And the Hey Vav now, they have this as, that is to say, or who is, but this is also he, she, and it. He, she, and it. We can't lose sight of that, the he, she, and it. But it's the door. Again, the dalet. The door that reveals the covenant of the pieces. Connect to mother and connect to father, because we have the vav and the vav, the two that have been separated. And on the inside of their separation, connecting mother will give you the power necessary, the yod, through the work and deed of your hand, The power, means, and direction to connect to Father. And you will be revealed as such because you did go through the door. You delivered yourself of your weak and feeble position by going on the inside. And this is connected to the He Vav Aleph, which is the spirit breath. The exhale, the He, and the inhale of the Aleph, so they are connected to one another. And that is the self. So really, and not in a negative way. You're born, you are given spirit breath. And that's necessary because they are connected to one another through the heart. And after the Pentateuch, it is in the feminine and not the masculine, which makes sense because the Pentateuch, the Torah, is the divine masculine linear, and after that would be the writings and the prophets that make up the Old Testament, the Tanakh, and of course the writings and the prophets, that's all divine feminine. So a large portion of the Old Testament, which is all they had in the time of Yeshua, they only had the Old Testament, they didn't have the New Testament, but they had the divine masculine and the divine feminine through their sacred writings back then, even prior to having the Aramaic form that was written in the New Testament. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys comprehended that, because it was like, yeah, I can totally see it, because spirit would be revealing to the prophets, and spirit is what allowed David to write the Psalms and the way he did, Solomon to write the other books. There's just a lot there that we need to take in consideration that is revealed through the divine feminine. And I did want to say this too, that if you cannot reveal light if you were ignorant of the oral tradition of how to read the codes. So in other words, if you don't know how to read this and what the additions of the letters and the deletions are of the letters, you cannot truly reveal the light, because then you just get surface translations. And then you'll say, you'll have something, you'll miss all of the full impact of what's being shared within the sacred writings. So back to this, if we are talking about those that have the glory and the anointing, we then get into the word of form, image, similitude, type, exemplar, pattern, likeness, appearance, and matter. And the root of it is dama, is dalet, mem, aleph. But again, the aleph isn't here yet, because it's letting us know that in order to have this likeness and go through the process, we have to have the Father's revelation. We have to have the spiritual teachings of maturation that is taking us to become, from the bride to being married, to become queen, aka king. They're the same thing, guys. King, queen, it's literally the same word in Hebrew. And it's spiritual sovereignty, okay? So this is in the likeness of spiritual sovereignty. And so in order to have it, that would be in the static form, but in the active form is showing us that we have to go through the door of death in order for this revelation to be given to us. And that makes sense. We entered in here. We entered into the waters of chaos, where we needed to be connected to our heart so that we could receive, because here, what has been added on the suffix side, if it was dalet mem aleph, then what was added on the suffix side is all right here, vav tav he. So going through the door into the waters of chaos, our veil of forgetting, so that we could connect to Father, receive his mark, and be revealed as such. Now, another way you could see it, because the aleph and he are interchangeable, the he has to come before the aleph. You have to have the exhale for the inhale, and the exhale is behold revelation. Then you could see the vav tav is on the inside. This means connecting to heart, connecting to source, creator within, which is the third tav that has been hidden. It's common to see the tav on the prefix and the tav on a suffix, but when it's on the inside, this is the covenant, sign, mark, signature, frequency of creator source, all for Father, source, origin that you've connected to through your heart. And again, we have the word dam. We have blood, the blood that connects to the covenant, because we know that blood is congealed light that has just simply been slowed down. So the door entering into death is where we find this revelation while we're here in our earth suit. So I love the fact that Dhamma also means resembled, likened, compared, but it's also about intended, he thought, believed, and imagined. Our imagination is so profound. And so my heart goes out to anybody that had such a huge imagination and it was stifled, because that is how we create. And it is through the thoughts of our heart and our imagination that we create that which is around us. And that's what allows us to tap and go beyond the veil. And you can see that we have the duality, to cease and to stop and to cease in believing, to cease and stop in imagining, and to thinking. And that really leads to becoming a dummy and one that's been silenced. So if we listen to outside narratives that tell us to cease and stop from imagining and believing, because we are to be in the likeness of a pattern, an exemplar pattern. Exemplar is a person, thing serving as a typical example or an excellent model. So the etymology of this is the original model of the universe in the mind of God. How beautiful is that? The model of virtue, a copy, pattern, and model of the universe in the mind of God. And how appropriate is that the next word is God? And actually, this flipped on me. The doll, it's supposed to be in front here. So in the likeness, in an exemplar pattern from the original model of the universe in the mind of God. The original model, shuv, to repent, to return back to origin. The door to God. Again, the door, the door, the door, the door, over and over again. The door entering into the oneness principle. The strong leader, teaching shepherd that is going to bring forth the revelation that we are all one. And we have the covenant of the pieces here again. We have Aleph Lamed, or we have the Aleph on the front, an Aleph on the back, and in the inside we have the teachings, instructions that are going to bring revelation on the inside. So the covenant of the pieces, mother and father, all about the covenant of promise, is finding and activating that light as the Lamed connected to our heart and having it revealed to us on the inside. This is our door into going in, delivering ourselves from that weak and feeble place so that we realize that truly we are as God. And that's the likeness of. And again, over and over again, repeatedly, we see that the door has been given so that this revelation would be made manifest to us. And when we take a look at it and seeing the strength of the body is really when we connect to the heart. That is really where it starts from. In going down here, being powerful is when a strong leader, teaching shepherd is connected to their heart through the instructions and has been given the staff of authority. And when we connect there, then it changes to the power on the inside. But what happens is that when we forget who we are, we don't realize that we are God. So we're meant to be a strong leader, teaching shepherd, but we didn't connect to our heart. We didn't connect to the power within. So we are God walking around without having any power at all. And so what has to happen to us is the revelation needs to be brought forward of Father's teaching in spiritual maturation by having a strong leader, teaching shepherd that brings this revelation to us, which then Mother opens the door for that process to begin so that we can enter in and become one. So again, this verse isn't anything like we've seen before when we look at from a fearful place with the way that they wrote it. Because I know that when I say that the God of this world has blinded, we already went through all of this to see that that wasn't the case. It's about stirring us up and rousing us awake. And then we showed that the God of this word, Dalit, the God of this world, Dalit, the door, Yod He Vav He, the God of this world, Christ, the Christ Sophia Yeshua combination, mother and father, Yod He Vav He, was rousing us awake because of those who believe that were once weak and feeble and went through the instruction that raised them up so that they could become the light the light of the world, having it revealed to them the true gospel that would be the uncovering of the flesh to reveal those who went through the door, that are revealed, that have the glory. They went through the fire, building themselves, finding life, connecting to it, the Christ anointing that is within, giving them the power and the oneness, unity, who are in the image of God. And we would rise as such, as having gone through the door repeatedly over and over again. And these are the strong leaders. These are the priests and the pillars. These are those who have made themselves nothing, having dealt with their beast ego nature, and rising up through the covenant of the pieces, the power of mother and father, where they found the instructions on the inside. So I hope that takes fear out of some of this stuff, brings clarity to things that have been obfuscated in the English translations, to see that this truly is not what it says in English, but really is go through the door, go through the door. The God of this world, Yod He Vav He, the Yeshua, Sophia, Christ, the Christos, and the Holy Spirit, Mother and Father raising us up through the seraphic message, is so that we too can be revealed as having become one. Shalom, shalom, and namaste.